Welcome everyone to another edition of ALN Thursday at 3. My name is Mike Bordenaro. I'm the Executive Director of the Asset Leadership Network, and we'll be talking today with our longtime colleague and friend, Michael Hardy. He is an ALN Senior Fellow and Vice President of Asset Management for Veritas North America in the Infrastructure and Buildings section. He'll be talking about a very important aspect of buildings, child safety at military housing. But before we get into this discussion with Michael, let's thank our organizational members, including Onuma Inc., who has Onuma System and other software solutions, Jacobs, ABS Quality Evaluations, Definitive Logic, and CGI. We have some really good programs going on with all of these patron members, and we're very thankful for their patronage and for their active involvement. And our organizational members who really like working with. We've got a group of like-minded entities here, and very happy with the impact we are having together as a network. So thank you to all of our organizational members. And next week, we have a really exciting conversation with the Mentor APM and Uberlytics team, Jennifer and Tacoma Zach, who were on an extended trip to Australia, where they have a contract with an Aboriginal organization. And they presented, and we're going to have a US view of asset management in Australia. We really respect our Australian colleagues and look forward to the report that Jennifer and Tacoma will be having. And later in the month, Steve Whiten, who's the manager of the asset management planning for City of Calgary, actually he's gone through a transition and he is doing something that's even over this, but we'll be able to catch up with Steve. Calgary is a leader in large city asset management, and we really look forward to that presentation on June 29th at 3 p.m. Eastern. And if everything goes well, our ALN executive briefing on June 29th at 3:30 p.m. will focus on Calgary. And we don't have that confirmed yet, so don't hold me accountable yet. But organizational members, Onuma and CDV Systems, have joined together and are offering an approach to asset information for the entire life cycle to building owners. And Calgary has this excellent revitalization of their downtown through residential housing and high-rise buildings. And last week, Onuma System and CDV worked together to create a corporate apartment building in downtown Tokyo. And they're going into more detail on the information sharing that they can do through the entire system, the life cycle of a building. But they're going to pick it up and land it in Calgary and show how to meet the owner requirements there. So if everything works out, that'll go hand in glove. Otherwise, there'll be two separate presentations. And then on July 13th, we have co-authors of the National Academy of Sciences Strategies for Renewing Federal Facilities talking. And I bet you that will be an hour-long program. So mark your calendar for that. Mike was the chair and Jack was the co-chair for the report from the National Academies. We're looking forward to that one too. So that's a lot to say. Welcome to Michael Hardy. How you doing, sir?
Doing good. Nice talking to you, Mike.
Yeah, good talking to you again. You have been very busy at Bureau Veritas North America, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to say for the first time, one of our ALN senior fellows submitted a report to Congress earlier this week.
Oh, yeah.
That's
pretty exciting for me too.
Well, we usually say, how did you start your asset management journey? But let's condense that and say, how did this report to Congress start its journey?
Yeah, so it actually, started way back with a really a tragic accident.
Mhm.
Um, Back in 2011, a young boy who was uh, stationed with his parents in Hawaii fell from a window in their housing, military housing, and fell to his death. And this is, it really shined a light on how this is not something that like never happened. It actually was kind of a regular occurrence. So this got the attention of Congress, who put into the Defense Authorization Act some language directing DoD to really look into this issue, child safety in general, specifically fall related. Um, and
Before
like,
you go any further, can we just say how sorry
oh,
we are about that?
yeah,
Oof,
I mean, a terrible tragedy.
just
Absolutely.
horrible. But there's nothing positive out of it, but that was what got the attention of Congress, and there is some positive movement. And in any type of housing, this is not limited to military housing. There are tragic accidents that occur, and it's horrible. But the interesting part of this, and well, I'm not going to jump ahead of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, I think, where those of us in the United States, we're used to, a big federal government that doesn't move quickly often, but is moved to action by certain kinds of events, especially. And this was one that did move the Congress. They directed DoD to assess what the risks are and make recommendations about what should be done. The unfortunate thing is that was FY18. So it took quite a few years for the folks in the housing office at the Pentagon to actually get the funding that was needed together so that they could get this study initiated. So what, when we got that contract, it was competitively bid, and Bureau Veritas, won that. Had a pretty short, period of time. We only had about 9 months to get it done. And we had to send people all over the world to actually do assessments at military bases, in lots of foreign countries. So there were, more than 100 people at BV and some of our partners that were involved in, getting this study done. But and one of those partners was our own Jack Dempsey, who I was, very thrilled to have be part of our team. And I think the end result is we came up with some, really important findings. We put some numbers to the size of the problem so that it could actually, we could actually manage to this. And we put some recommendations together. Mostly, won't surprise anybody in this group, but mostly these are policy related. So, we essentially need to start, applying asset management principles to, military housing, and we need to develop a culture of safety, child safety in military housing. And those are, those kind of cultural things people don't often think about as asset management, unless they're, familiar with ISO 55000, because that's kind of where it all starts.
okay, I'm just gonna quickly flash up the cover, and let people know that this is available, I believe, through Congress, but we can provide that information. Oh, was it sharing? Did you see
Nope.
Not that one. There we go. There we go.
There it is.
So I believe that's available through Congress now that has been presented to Congress. And when the House of Representatives or the Senate or whoever it is in Congress provides a web link to this, we will provide the public web link to this. Does that sound reasonable, Michael?
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, if anybody has a particular interest in seeing the report, they can reach out to me. I'd be happy to send that along. There are two parts of the report. The first part does not have any, overly sensitive, those secret information meant for public consumption. There is another piece that's got all the data and specifics, and all of that was, I don't believe that will be released to the public, but we provided that to the Pentagon.
Okay, before we go into details on this, and that was a perfect overview. Thank you. Can you tie this into any observations you've made about asset management recently? It's been a while since we've talked, so.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's just we've had this flurry, I would say, of activity in the past year around military housing, and really what, and again, I admit my own biases here, in the way that I think about these things, but we're with the Air Force, we're doing a bunch of sort of general inspections in the privatized housing. Had this project going on that was, looking at a specific issue, but in government-owned military housing. And then more recently with the Army, we've had a similar experience on the privatized side. And it really strikes me.
Privatized housing?
Privatized housing, yep. And one of my, things that's been a little bit, irritating to me is the degree to which, 20 years ago in this move to privatize housing, and the leadership at the time thinking this will solve our problem. We simply need to, offload all the military housing that we haven't taken care of. And then that will make the asset management problem go away. But of course, it did no such thing. It simply, temporarily made things look better, but they still really didn't address the asset management policy or funding or other, sort of tactical things that would have been in place to have all of these folks that were building and maintaining the military housing. 20 years later, we're right back where they were, where the housing for military families, which is a critical military readiness issue, it is as important as a tank or a ship, and yet.
Thank you for saying that. As the son of a retired colonel, we moved around a lot and we're treated like chattel. So thank you for giving housing a high priority.
Yeah, and some of it's my own experience. I spent first 11 years of my life in military housing as well. And I think that it's, I'm not saying there aren't people who know how important it is. Certainly the whole, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Sustainment understands this very well, what is going on here. But again, it just highlights the need that the leadership for asset management needs to establish, these policies and think through what asset management means in the
And you
context of
have,
military housing or everything else.
yeah, especially and everything else. But you have photographic evidence that other leaders are paying attention.
I do. Let me just share that. Nice setup for that, because I really did want to show this picture because it's pretty great. Okay, so very recently, we were at Fort Gordon, Army garrison in Georgia, and there is actually the Army has plans to do these general inspections, sort of independent inspections at all military bases, but it was taking some time. And the man in the blue suit is Senator Ossoff from Georgia, and he was basically not waiting around. So it got his attention that things are not up to par at housing. So he made enough noise, as you would hope a senator would do, that the Army actually moved up their inspections for Fort Gordon. We were fortunate to be a big part of the team that went and did those, and they're actually delivering the results right now. The handsome man in the red hat there is one of my colleagues here from Bureau Veritas, actually. So
It looks like I can identify the Bureau Veritas logo on
yeah, just a
his
little bit.
shirt.
But the great thing here is, and really the reason I wanted to share this is, Congress is taking this very seriously. And I think certainly on the child safety, our report was focused on making recommendations that if they were to insist and direct the Pentagon to do so, would make a difference. And really, that's my hope from, all the effort that we've been working on here the last, year, Air Force, Army, and, overseas, DOD.
When did this inspection occur?
This was probably a month ago.
So still pretty recent in terms of asset management terms, and very recent in terms of congressional schedule. So
Yes, indeed.
all right, you can stop sharing that now. And we do have the outline of the report available, but why don't you just take some time and talk us through the report in a little more detail. You gave us a very good overview.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm happy to get anybody a copy of this that is interested enough to read through the details. I think on the at a high level, though, let's see if I can just find the right thing here, because that would be easier than trying to read.
I've got the table of contents. You can just go ahead and talk.
All right. So anyway, so there's, the government owns 35,000 or so military housing units. In the United States, most of the military housing has been privatized. So there's very few left in the US. So most of these were overseas in UK, Germany, Spain, Italy, Korea, Japan, and a bunch of the, Marshall Islands, Guam, places like that. So we looked at a sort of statistical sample of those, because the time and funding wasn't available to look at every single unit. But we were able to focus on 11 measures of safety, so related to the windows and fall protection. And we found, if you want to skip ahead to maybe like page 11, I think it's where one of the key tables is. So I don't know if that's too small to read for everybody, but if you take a look here, at first you say, well, on these 11 measures, in some cases that, folks did pretty good. But I think if you put it in another context, overall, like 1 in 4, military housing units has at least one significant child safety issue that's not been addressed. And the report does not find, this was, is due to negligence. This is really due to many factors such as, outdated or grandfathered building codes, sometimes, the age of the properties. And like, again, looking at kind of, asset management, these are all reasons why that's true, but it really comes down to a failure of, having a comprehensive policies that address these issues. So the findings are, pretty straightforward. To deal with policy, we recommend, they undertake a thorough study of these issues, and in different types of housing, what can specifically be addressed. And in some cases, the government will have some hard decisions to make, but if they have that, information and the leadership has the will, then they should be able to make good decisions to implement the things that matter most first. So at least that's our hope.
So one of the things about ISO 55001, well, actually all of the documents, is that it's not rocket science. And
True.
what you have said is also not rocket science. But similar to the ISO 55000 documentation, it's the first time in the history of the world that there was consensus that these are the steps to go through to ensure establishing the culture so that you get the improvement to intended outcomes in a measurable way. And despite the fact that it's taken a long time, despite the fact that these are obvious conclusions, we applaud the US government and Bureau Veritas for actually taking the time and energy to document the obvious so that common sense becomes more common to people and less child death occurs at military multi-family housing. And by the way, private industry, you can learn from this also.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's one other lesson specifically from this project that I think is worth noting, and that was having people involved in this project who are intimate with ISO 55000 principles. So Jack Dempsey, who is going to speak in a few weeks and has, been obviously a big part of this for a long time. Having Jack had a very important role in developing the report. So essentially coalescing a lot of, the findings and observations and what does it all mean? And I think anybody familiar with ISO 55000 will read this report and will see, while we don't, call that out specifically, we don't talk, a lot about asset management by name. The fingerprints of ISO 55000 are all over this. And I know that without, Jack and some of the other folks here that, take this seriously, without them being involved in the development of the report, it would have been very technical, very tactical, very matter of fact, it would have been very truthful, and it would have been, just sort of a so what. So I think the more that people can sort of engage folks like Jack Dempsey, and lots of others,
ALN Senior Fellow, and you
yes,
are an ALN Senior Fellow. We are happy to highlight your actions, but you two knew each other before the network, so you were already aware of each other.
indeed. But I just think that, not that Jack needs any puffing up from me. He's certainly very accomplished all by himself. But I just really, I saw the difference in the product here, and that kind of thinking, I think is going to make this translate. We delivered this to 6 armed services committees that exist in the House and the Senate and the Pentagon, and I really think it will move the needle. And I don't think that I don't think I wouldn't have the same optimism about the results without the influence of, this kind of, asset leadership thinking and how that translated to this report.
Excellent. So glad to hear you say that. And I think that's it for the talking about the report. We have a little bit of time if you want to prognosticate about who's going to win the World Series, or where do you see asset management moving from this? All right. So let's just really emphasize this. What you said about asset management influencing a direct report to Congress is a huge win for the global asset management community.
Indeed.
You see that happening in other military housing situations. Do you think that this type of thinking could start penetrating into more of Congress, more of the agencies?
I think so. I think there are a lot of things happening right now that are giving me encouragement that we're moving in that direction. I think that the strategies report that will be covered in a couple weeks.
July 13th.
July 13th.
About a month. Yeah.
So the strategies report is getting a lot of traction, and of course it deals with these issues at a top level for every kind of federal property. Our work over the last year, and I think in the next couple of years, is a slice of that. But I think what's encouraging me is I am starting to hear people ask kind of the why question. Why is this the case? Why is it, not merely enough that we have data about, whatever, why isn't knowing our deferred maintenance, changing anything? It's because that's not the problem, right? The problem isn't not, I didn't know the number. Oh, I didn't realize, that's not the problem. The problem is, I don't think they are thinking about it the right way. And some of these things in the federal side, I think, are going to change that. And even on the state, local government level, we've got a project coming up with Salt Lake City, Utah, that is, in the last 20, 30 years, a very standard condition assessment, capital planning kind of activity, but they built in some things to provide some room in the contract to actually have an asset management conversation, because like every major city or every state practically, they've done this. Like, we did our condition assessments. This is our 3rd round of those. Like, we know what the numbers are. It's not changing anything. How do we change things? And I think that's an exciting development as well.
Excellent. That addresses what ALN CEO and founder Jim Dieter has always said. Our bridges are not falling down because we don't know how to maintain bridges. Our bridges are falling down because our leaders are not marshaling the will of the people to do the hard work of maintaining our bridges. And it's
And
not the hard work of the people maintaining the bridges. It's the hard work of marshaling the will of the people. But that is what they're supposed to be doing.
exactly right. And like, as usual, Jim Dieter's completely right about that.
Mhm.
And we've had lots of folks, participating in ALN events over the years who have spoken, to everything from, infrastructure to social justice, dealing with these exact things. The hard part is marshaling the will. So I'm hoping that we can change the conversation in our industry from, here's your number to, what do you need to do, to make this, affect this change?
I can't think of anything better to say in terms of the ALN's goal. So thank you. We'll take that as a wrap.
Okay.
But before we leave, let's thank once again all of our participants and upcoming events. So first and foremost, thank you very much, sir, for your time today. Really appreciate all your activities. And then, of course, our organizational members, including ALN Platinum member, Onuma Inc. Oh, went too fast past our patron members. It is hot in Chicago, so I think my computer is slowing down. So our patron members also, thank you. Our organizational members, much appreciation. And then next week, organizational members, Mentor APM Uberlytics will be our guest on ALN Thursday at 3, talking about Australian asset management. On the 29th, we have Steve Whitten from City of Calgary, just an outstanding asset management leader. And if you notice, there's a couple of empty slots between June 8th and the 29th. So please contact us if you're interested in being a guest. And also on the 29th, we have a program that's an ALN executive briefing, which we see as a way of addressing what Michael indicated. People need to understand what to specify. They need to know what they can do. A lot of people, technology is advancing so fast, it's hard to even understand what's going on. So the ALN members are providing executive briefings. It's a new offering. And then the National Academy's strategies for renewing federal facilities with ALN senior fellows Mike Imony and Jack Dempsey is coming up. So we feel like
a good one.
Got some content, and that's going to be the first of a number of programs addressing the strategies. So thank you to you again, Michael, and all of our attendees, all of our members. We appreciate it and look forward to seeing you next week. Bye for now.